Good evening. He's been a sharpshooter for Labour and not one to hold back when it comes to the performance of Sarah and EQC. His North Canterbury seat is probably safe, but is he getting over being in opposition? Clayton Cosgrove is my guest, and Lynched starts right now. Thanks for joining us. Well, the Christchurch Mayor says the government needs to sort out its communication with the council. Well, the government's blaming private landlords and the council for creating what it says is the biggest mess on its plate. But a new report is highly critical of Sarah, saying the agency, that's a government agency by the way, is holding back the rebuild. What on earth is going on, and who is telling the truth, and who is giving us the spin? Labour's Clayton Cosgrove, you got the answer for me?
Well, I think, it's 3.5 years on, nearly 4 years on, and we now have, sadly, the Mayor and Mr Brownlee who, couldn't agree on what tea bags to use, or brand of tea bags to use at Smoko. And I think long term there's going to be some punishment dealt out by the community. You have a new Mayor and new council, very energetic, I think very conciliatory, a completely different strategy from Mr Parker and the sort of fiefdom mentality that was there. I think a lot of goodwill towards the council and the Mayor. And you've got Mr Brownlee who, is almost, I don't know whether he enjoys being antagonistic and enjoys being provocative, or maybe the power's gone to his head, I don't know. But what people want, to quote Mr Brownlee actually, is for the whole show to get on with it. You've got developers in this town. I'll give you an example. I'm told there was a person, $30 million they had. They want to actually build something in the CBD because there's actually people with money, developers and construction folk that do this, not governments. They had an hour and a half or whatever with Sarah, and at the end of it nothing was resolved, and it was sort of, well, hang on, I want to actually do something for the city. I don't know if that money's disappeared to Sydney or Auckland or anywhere else, but it's just sort of stagnating here. And what we don't want, I think Leanne's right, we don't want sort of, there's only a couple of key people in this. There's Mr Sutton, there's Mr Brownlee and there's the Mayor. They're the key three individuals around us talking past each other.
Well, let's be honest here, Roger Sutton's a nothing, isn't he? I mean, he doesn't make any decisions at all. It's all Jerry Brownlee. I mean, in fact, to be honest with you, I don't even know what he does. Well, or why he's even there.
Well, to be fair to Roger, I would have appointed him if I was Minister, when I was Shadow Minister. I think he had absolute political unanimity of support. I think he proved himself at Orion. I think he's the right guy for the job. The problem is he went into Sarah, and Mr Brownlee, you can't order a set of paper clips with the 30 odd, I think it is, communication people. You can't order a set of paper clips without Mr Brownlee signing off. And with Roger's the sort of guy, you've got to give him plenty of rope. He's a creative guy. He wants to be open. He wants to bring people with him.
Well,
he wants to energise the show.
But it's not working, is it? We have developers saying in that latest report that it was in the press only a couple of weeks ago now, we've got developers around the city saying Sarah is stopping meaningful progress. They are big words and scary words from developers. They can't get anything done. So what is the answer? Do we need to say bye-bye, Sarah, here's the power back council?
Well, I think that's certainly, that will happen, I hope, once the legislation expires. What should have happened, and we proposed this, because often people say, well, okay, you moan a lot, what are you going to propose? We proposed that there should have been the Minister, a board, and the Chief Executive, very similar to what Roger came out of with Orion. He had the council, a board, and him as the Chief Executive.
When you say board, a board made up of who? Commercial representatives of the city?
Well, yeah, smart people. We've got tons of smart people in this province.
What about Sarah? Aren't they smart in there?
No, I don't think. I think they're a bunch of bureaucrats who've been parachuted in with their clipboards and horn rim glasses, wandering around saying tut-tut.
Do you know that for a fact? Are they just from Wellington? Do they fly them down?
A lot of them are, yeah. But we've got really smart people. What a board does is take the politics out of it. So the Minister, the board is answerable to Minister, the Chief Executive has a lot of rope, they can do it. But you make a good point. You talk about developers and construction folk. Developers are the ones with the dough that are going to rebuild our city. They have to be facilitated. Sarah's job should be, If I was the minister, I'd call them all in. I had a meeting with a construction guy and we talked about this. And I'd say, okay, developers, construction folk, what are all the blockages? And I want a shopping list. What can we do to mow down blockages? Right, and I'd turn to my officials at CERA and I'd say, your job is to get rid of all these blockages and facilitate the development because governments aren't paying for it.
We don't have that, do we? I feel
it's a different mindset.
I feel so sad when I'm going down, driving my car through the central city and perception is everything.
Yeah, sure.
You know, the physical rebuild ain't happening. It's like the physical rebuild is happening everywhere but what the government controls. Now, it's all very well to say that they're turning the soil on the Justice Precinct. So what? That's a government investment. It is not private investment. We had Peter Townsend on this program last week who put his hands up in a roundabout way and admittedly said there are no international investors. He kept referring back to the private insurance companies from Australia are pouring money into the city. Well, that's because we had a disaster.
Of course.
We are not getting any new investment from overseas. How do we change that? How do we change Christchurch's
Well, it's
fortune?
very simple.
What would Labor do?
I used to be in business. It's real simple. If you have money, right, so I use the case I gave you, the person had $30 million. You've got to make that money work. You just don't put it in the bank. You've got to make it work. It's capital, right? So why will you invest here if there is facilitation, if planning processes and life is made easy so you can actually go and be innovative and get the building built, right? Now, that's what a bureaucracy should be doing. They should be, instead of giving you 100 reasons why you can't do it, they should be giving you 100 reasons how we can facilitate this. CERA should have been a facilitator of progress. What it's turned into through a culture of Mr Brownlee is just edicts drop from the sky like bricks and with very little consultation with people. Developers are the ones that are going to pay for the rebuild of our city.
Have we got long in this segment, but I want to ask you, the rebuild they say could take 20 years to complete. As far as I'm concerned, that's a complete disgrace. I probably would have been gone out of Christchurch by then if that really is the case. But in your view, Clayton, what are the priorities when it comes to the anchor projects?
I think the anchor projects have got to be those that facilitate progress and business progress, right? Because that's the stuff that creates jobs, right? So you've got to look at them and say, anchor projects, okay, what is going to draw in what you've just talked about? Other
What are they, in your view?
Oh, well, you know, I don't, well, most of the decisions have been made. The convention centre, I think, is important. I think it's very, very important because that leads to accommodation because you're getting tourists, you're getting conferences, and we used to host a lot of them with that convention centre.
But you accept convention centres internationally. The research suggests they don't make money. They are loss-making ventures. They are a burden on ratepayers. That's the reality, though, isn't it?
It can be, but it's a bit like the World Cup.
Am I being too negative?
No, you're not. No, I think it's fair, and punters want to actually have these discussions. It's a bit like the World Rugby Club. It didn't, and you know, the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games. These things don't make a profit; they make a loss. But the amount of economic money, the amount of money that comes in, and the indirect, direct spend, and the churn that happens with dollars, and the dollars that are created actually makes it worthwhile for the community. Right? You grow business feeds around it. That creates jobs. That gives people livelihoods. You know, it's smart. We need.
I hope so. Aren't we talking low wage jobs here? We're not talking sexy, you know, decent jobs, are we?
No,
convention centres create
I
low
disagree.
wage economy.
Yeah, but I disagree. If we get see the frame, I'm not a sort of creative sort of art guy. I don't know whether the frame's a good thing or not. I looked at it and thought, hey, it's
what's
not
this,
too bad.
the green frame
but
thing?
no, the Jerry Brownlee's frame, the great master plan. But a developer said this to me, which was interesting. You know, when you get a house built, you have an architectural plan, but by the time you've built it, there'll be a door in a different place and a window in a different place. It evolves, and this is where you've got to bring the CBD plan. It can't sit in concrete. It's actually got to evolve. The needs of 2 years ago are quite different, and developers need to have that flexibility.
They do.
You know, it needs to be an evolving sort of process.
And that's the sad thing, isn't it? I always often think the CBD should have been allowed to organically grow. Yes, we needed rules and regulations after the major earthquake, but for goodness gracious me, let's allow it to grow with developers who are keen. Let's not strangle
the bottom line,
it. You know?
the bottom line, though, is if you're sitting on $30 million, you can't afford to wait 12 months for a whole. You'll go to Sydney, you'll go to Auckland. People have their hearts here; they want to invest here, but they can't. They lose money if there's bureaucracy and blockages put in their way.
Need to take a break. Coming up, the political landscape of Christchurch. How different is it to the rest of New Zealand? That's next on Lynched. Welcome back. Clayton Cosgrove is my guest. Clayton, the political landscape in Christchurch, I suspect, is different than the rest of New Zealand. that be, and what I mean by that is we have EQC issues, insurance issues. It's so easy to say, oh, the government's not helping me out, you know. And Labor, to be fair, has probably still got that stronghold in the city. Are things changing though? I mean, is your seat safe now with the boundary changes?
No, quite the reverse actually. It'll be a far tougher prospect than it was last time. The majority was about 600 to the National Party, but ever since I took over the seat from Mike Moore, the city was predominantly dominated by Christchurch. The boundary was Wairaki Road, then it went to Harewood, then it went to Northcote, now it's basically the Styx Bridge. They lost all to Redwood. So it's predominantly dominated rural. It will be a far tougher challenge. Certainly not safe.
Who is your contender then?
I can't remember his name. Can you help me out?
No. Oh, yes, I can help you out. Matthew Ducey.
Oh, right.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. So, you know, it's predominantly rural
and then we had Kate Wilkinson, didn't we?
Yes, indeed.
Is she still alive?
I believe so.
Okay. No, I mean, I say that respectfully. I mean, we've never had her on News Talk CB. She represents a certain sector of Canterbury. She never fronts up to anything. Have you met her?
Well, yeah, I have.
Is she nice? Does she speak?
Let me put it this way. I think the people of Canterbury, and the people of Waimakere area, I think, want MPs who will dig their toes in and stick up for them. And when I was in government,
well, you're certainly everywhere, aren't you?
I had a record of actually, you know, my government tried to put a prison in Waimakere area. I had to go to them and say, sorry, I don't support it. Sometimes you've got to go and knock City Hall and stand up for the local folks. The most important job in politics is looking after the local people, not the Wellington stuff. That's what you actually put there.
David Cunliffe, will he be your leader of Labor next year?
Yes.
Well, you said that very fast, didn't you?
It's crystal clear, mate.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Will he be the Prime Minister?
I believe so.
Or there was a hesitation there?
Trust the people, mate.
There was a hesitation. You're not convinced.
I am convinced.
You had a wee hesitation.
Oh, come on. You're acting like a psychologist, mate.
No. You don't believe he's going to be the Prime Minister,
yes,
do you?
Come on. Yes, I do. I've been in this game since I was 14. I'm now 44. That's 30 years. I've seen governments come and go. What you have to do is you have to present your program and your credentials as a political party to the people every 3 years. And there are a lot of New Zealanders, not just in Canterbury, a lot of New Zealanders hurting out there. People will look at the various programs and they'll say, hey, the economy is moving, but are we actually getting our fair share? We were told to tighten our belts for 6 years, pull our heads in, there was no money for anything. Now we're being told the economy is moving round. The question is, are people getting their fair shake?
But the question is, the political polls for John Key and the national government are going fantastically well. It seems like the government can't do anything wrong. It may be a slightly different situation in Canterbury, but by and large, he can't do anything wrong. You must be worried. You must be concerned.
You never take anything for granted, but you've got to understand that when they put the polls up, they're like first past the post polls. Who's ahead of who? You've actually got to add up the Labor bloc, right,
and
on the centre left, yep.
And
then you've got to add up the mad, the bad and the sad, which is National, the Conservative Party, who don't believe in the moon landing.
Well, you could say the same for the Greens.
The ACT and the three-headed troika. And you've got to add those blocks up. And when you add the blocks up, the likely blocks, there's about, I think, between 3 and 5% in it. That's actually how MMP works. A lot of people don't like it, but they voted for it.
I'll tell you what I don't think you like is your mate Shane Jones walking out on Labor. You liken that to gee, didn't you overplay that one? You liken it to Richie McCaw leaving the Crusaders.
Yeah,
He's not God.
Oh, well, neither was Richie McCaw last time at Cheap. He's a damn good impact player. And
So Shane Jones is a huge loss to Labor voters, that slightly centre-right within Labor voters.
Look, Shane's a very close friend of mine, and when you lose a mate and he goes and goes to do something else, you want your mates there, you want to fight the battle with them. Shane's made a call to do other things, and yeah, he will be a loss. He spoke to a very wide cross-section of New Zealand.
Your colleague Megan Woods told me on News Talk CB this was a positive step for Labor. I was quite confused as to how that can possibly be the case.
Well, I haven't seen that, but you have to say...
She said to me on News Talk CB, this is positive for Labor. He's done the right thing now. Yeah. I mean, unless she's been sitting under a rock, most political commentators, including myself, believe this is a disaster for Labor.
Well, I think Shane had a wonderful ability. He was like a ballistic cannon. He wouldn't just hit his target, he'd obliterate it. And he was doing some sterling work with the supermarket issue and other issues. And he was he's a fantastic orator. And a guy who could, and by the way, he's actually a hell of a nice bloke. If you had a beer with him and a laugh and a joke, you'd sort of break a rib. He's got a great sense of humour. So, but he's chosen to go on to do other things.
He's gone out in spectacular style, though, several months out from a general national election. It's not a good look. It's a kick in the teeth, isn't it, for David Cunliffe?
Look, I think Shane's made his call. The leaders quite clearly said it's not to do with his leadership or the party. Shane's actually, he's 55. Won't thank me for saying that, but he's decided to make a call. You've got to respect that. I'd want him to stay and be carried out in a box, at the end of his retirement. But
who do you rate in Labour? I mean, obviously you really rate Shane Jones as a political performer.
Yeah.
Who else do you rate in Labour?
Oh, we've got the leader.
Give me one.
Our leader for a start, David Parker, who's an ex-business person, a brilliant mind, the sort of guy, the steady, rock-solid guy you want as your finance spokesperson. You've got people like Annette King, who is a fighter, who's probably the best health minister we've ever had, I think. People like Damien O'Connor, ex-business person, ex-dairy farmer, a guy who is developed right through, very in touch with the rural
Is there
scene.
enough new blood? I mean, all these names you're rattling off, they've probably been, previously cabinet ministers. Is there enough new blood coming through Labour? I mean, you've got Tony Milne, for example. How do you rate his chances up against Nicky Wagner?
I think he'll beat Nicky. And yes, there is. And remember, we're a smaller group. When we come to the election, there'll be a lot of new blood come in because we'll win a large number of seats. But, who's old guard? If you have a look, how many cabinets has Bill English served in? How many cabinets did Tony Ryall serve in and go through there? It's actually about performance. We can have this new blood, old blood stuff. I've been a cabinet minister for 3 years. I'm 44. I got the odd grey hair and I wish I had more hair. But it's actually about performance. At the end of the day, people in Canterbury, for instance, want to know, will somebody stand up and if they've got a problem, which they'll a hell of a lot have with their insurance stuff and things like that, will somebody fight for them?
I want to talk about an issue affecting your area.
Yeah.
Well, or the fact we need a rail service.
Yeah, absolutely. Hallelujah.
Isn't this sort of like a back to the future mentality?
It's Groundhog Day. I think it was 8 years ago, ECAN had a study.
We got rid of it though because people got in their cars.
Yeah.
The concern, I guess, some people could suggest is that will people get out of their cars and back into rail again? It's
good
back
point.
to the future, isn't it?
If I used to live in Perth for a few years, I was in the mining industry, and they have an amazing commuter service coming in from Fremantle and other places. Here's what you've got to do. To convince people to get out of their cars, it's got to be cheaper, right? Point one. Secondly, it's always got to be reliable because the day you're a couple of hours late, the boss gives you a kick in the backside, you're back in your car again. And secondly, where it drops you off within the city or the CBD or whatever, you've got to have ancillary transport to get you where you need to go. The problem with Auckland, for instance, Britomart, end of Queen Street, then you've got to take a $20 cab. In Perth,
or a bus.
you get off, or a bus, in Perth you get off, there's a free bus service that does a figure eight, they call it the Red Cat and the Blue Cat. Every couple of minutes there's one there and it just spews people straight out to where they need to go.
On Talkback, there was a general sense from your, I suppose, supporters or people that live in your area, they need this rail service as soon as possible. I mean, we've got ECAN that's now commissioned, a $20,000 study.
Another study.
I mean, I wouldn't mind being a commissioner if all you do is commission studies for commissioners on behalf of other commissioners.
I don't mind studies as long as you actually do something with them.
Well, we know,
Exactly.
by all accounts, we do need a rail service. Will it ever get the go-ahead, do you think, though?
Well, I hope so, because if you look at Adelaide, a guy who was into commercial buses came into me and he said, they made a really interesting idea. The little maintenance vehicles that go on the track and they have tyres and they drop the wheels, they've got a similar
Pretend
thing.
cars.
Yeah, they've got a similar thing and they go down the track. Similar thing in Adelaide, where I'm told, I think it's Adelaide, where the buses go onto the track, down they go off, don't need a siding, go straight off again and link up with their actual buses. They link up with the existing on-land bus service. But whatever you do, if you do it right, you can get a hell of a lot of population driving, parking onto a train.
A lot of money. Where are we going to get the money from?
But people might actually, you look at the money that's being wasted sitting on the main North Road, where you're sitting there for an hour sometimes, business people, plumbers, losing money, ordinary folk who are having their gas bill go up because it's going up.
You haven't really answered the question, though. I love the idea, don't get me wrong, I think it's great, but just finally, where are we going to get the money from? We're going to have to borrow, aren't we?
Well, those are issues you've got to deal with and ECAN's got to come up with and government's got to be a part of. And yes, of course it costs money, but if the economy's losing millions because tradespeople and business people are stuck in traffic, that's millions. Nobody's done a study on that. That might be something ECAN should do to find out how much money's going up the kazoo when your local plumber's sitting there for an hour and a half and can't actually do an extra job that day. So, it swings and roundabouts. I think it's a no-brainer.
I want to talk about Environment Canterbury, more on them and the commissioners next, and when we'll see a possible return. A possible return to democracy.
Talk about log burners too.
Log burners, don't get me started. Stay with us, we'll be right back on Lynched. Welcome back to Lynched on CTV. A few final moments with Clayton Cosgrove. Clayton, Environment Canterbury. When should we see a return to democracy? Because on one hand, it seems to be business as usual. The commissioners seem to be doing an okay job.
Well, we should have had a return to democracy when the National Party promised we would, which I from memory was about a year ago, and then they welched on the deal and amended the legislation and pushed it out.
But are the commissioners doing an okay job, though?
Oh, I think in some things. I think we won't go into log burners. You'll pop your clogs if we do. I've heard you on radio. But I think people actually have the right to have a say. It's a bit like, you know, we're elected members of Parliament. You can get me in here and grill me because I'm responsible to you. You can't get an ECAN commissioner for love nor money because they're not responsible to us. They're responsible to Wellington. I could ring up some of the old regional councillors and say, "Oi, I've got constituents who've got a problem here. I need you to meet them."
You see, the government always maintains they got rid of the ECAN councillors because, well, they're a bunch of muppets essentially, and I probably would agree with that for some of them at least anyway. So what's changed now?
Well, that's the nature of democracy. You know, love us or hate us, people elect us or they don't. You know, politicians get one vote. We generally vote for ourselves, I hope. You get one vote, but the punters put us in or out. They choose us. You look at the City Council, I think we had a few muppets on the last City Council. I think we've got a high quality in general, a high quality City Council. Why can't we have a high...
Wasn't the last council awful?
Yes. Why can't we have a high quality, democratically elected ECAN who's actually then responsible to you? You can, as I say, you get me on your show.
But here's the deal. Here's the deal, though. What I think I like about the current commissioners, they seem to be knowing what they're doing. I prefer them than the last bunch of dysfunctional fools, frankly. Well, and I know that's democracy, we've got to...
But if you take your argument to its greatest extent, then you'd say get rid of the City Council, get rid of community boards, get rid of any Parliament, get rid of anybody who's elected. Let's have
so when do you want to see a return to democracy then?
I think as soon as possible. I think the National Party shouldn't have welched on the deal. There may have to be some sort of transition. But we've just talked about rail. If, you know, if they're making these decisions, who are they accountable to? They're not accountable at any stage to us here in Canterbury, the ratepayer, because they are appointed and paid for by Wellington. That's the big difference. You can get rid of these guys every 3 years if you don't like what they do. If people don't like the rail or they want rail, they can put pressure on them to say we demand a rail service, we're sick of sitting on our cars. How can we put pressure on ECAN? They're accountable to Wellington, not us.
Let's discuss EQC. You've been highly...
Have we got that much time?
Well, not really. You've been highly critical of EQC, and with probably good merit, to be fair. Has the performance of EQC improved? And let's just say since the start of this year, I'm not hearing the same level of disgruntled callers, for example, that I heard perhaps a year ago. But it seems to me there are still some issues to iron out. Do you accept, though, things have got slightly better for this, essentially, a government agency?
Well, we had the Ombudsman, the Auditor General and the Privacy Commissioner earlier this year who gave them a damn good kick up the backside and reminded Mr Brownlee that his department was breaking the law, had been for, I think, a year, 6 months, people desperate to get information using the OIA. It's quietened down, but I judge it simply by this, not by hyperbole, a bit like you, I suppose, by the number of punters that come into my office with EQC problems. Bottom line for those people, there's still those who are still living the nightmare are trying to get their money, trying to get their settlement, just like out of the belligerent insurers, and they're trying to get a straight answer to a whole lot of questions. Those people who've settled, the nightmare's over. Those people who haven't, they're still living it.
But the issues are getting better, though, aren't they? And for EQC, it seems to me, and you know, forgive me for saying this, it's just a small minority of people. I'm not trying to say that the issues aren't important, but things do seem to be getting better for insurance companies, for EQC, Southern Insurance. It is getting slightly better. Do we accept that or not?
On the insurance front, I would argue the reverse. I think Southern Response or No Response and other insurers, the punters that I get in, who are still trying to get unlocked. Remember this, if you can't get your insurance money, and the price of housing and land keeps going up, you may as well, as one person said to me, throw $100 bills each week into the
So what is your message for somebody like Peter Rose? at Southern Insurance?
Meet your responsibilities. Treat people as customers. That you are actually accountable to them. Deliver on what you said you'd do. A timely, reasonable insurance settlement is not 3.5 years.
You see, he's got no commercial responsibility because essentially Southern Insurance will wind up, and that's the difficulty these insurance clients face.
They're owned by the Crown, and the Crown is in charge of them, and the Crown has the ability to go in and boot them in the backside and say, do the right thing, and they should.
Clayton Cosgrove, out of time. Thanks
Cheers,
for coming
mate.
on Lynched tonight.
We'll
have you with Nikki Wagner in, I think.
Absolutely.
That'd be good fun, wouldn't
Fabulous.
it? Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell joins me on News Talks a Beat tomorrow, but from all of us here at CTV, good night.